So the following presentation is split up into two main components. The first component is going to focus primarily on National Instrument 43101. We're going to look at the reporting guidelines as set out for Canadian companies within 43101. We're going to look at, in particular, the National Instrument and why it is necessary today. And on top of that, we're going to focus in much more detail on the most applicable sections of the instrument in respect to Fortuna Silver. Finally, we're going to have a look at the role of the qualified person and the reasoning someone is required to have that responsibility and why they're entrusted with ensuring that any public releases follow National Instrument 43101. The second part of the presentation is going to focus more on the CIM best practices. In particular, we're going to look at the CIM best practice guidelines towards mineral resource and mineral reserve estimation. These best practices, as set out by the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum, particularly focus in on certain areas of the estimation process. We're going to have a look at the resource database and what's required to meet minimum best practice standards. What types of data verification are recommended by the CIM? What its expectations are in terms of geological interpretation and modelling? What it sets out as its best practices in terms of mineral resource estimation? The modifying factors which should be applied when converting mineral resources into mineral reserves. We'll then have a look at what the CIM states as best practice guidelines in terms of the reserve estimation process, how these numbers should be reported, and what type of reconciliations should be performed to ensure that the resource and reserve model comply with what we're seeing in terms of production and what we're seeing in terms of depletion when we're reporting to the public. Finally, we'll have a look at the responsibilities that are involved in terms of producing this information and who it falls upon in terms of reporting wise. So let's have a look more closely at National Instrument 43101. So there are a number of stock exchanges which Fortuna Silver Mines trade on throughout the world. These include the Peruvian, the Toronto Stock Exchange, and in Europe the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, and finally also the New York Stock Exchange. However, the most important stock exchange that we trade on is the Toronto Stock Exchange. And the body which is tasked with ensuring that the minimum requirements are met when any type of public disclosure is made on the Toronto Stock Exchange falls with the Canadian Securities Authority. And in terms of that, they've set out a series of documents which allow us to ensure that when we make any type of public disclosure that we are following the rules and regulations as far as they've set out, and we're not including anything which may be misconstrued by the public. So these main documents include, firstly, the National Instrument 43101. This is the most important document in terms of public disclosures, as it sets out the minimum standards required for any mineral project or company trading in Canada which is involved with mineral exploration or mining. In terms of trying to help us understand the instrument fully, there is also a companion policy, the 43101 CP, which goes along with National Instrument 43101. Within that is more detailed explanations of particular phrases or particular wordings to ensure that the document is followed and fully understood. In certain circumstances, a technical report will need to be filed on SEDAR. This is the public available website which allows you to download that information from any mining company which is producing a technical information formula, and the technical report is standardized in such a way that it ensures that each company reports and produces the information in a clear and concise manner in a standardized format. To ensure this is performed, there is a Form 43101 F1 which sets out clearly exactly how a technical report needs to be set in terms of each section and what the expectations are for the information to be included within each section. So this is very clear in terms of allowing us to be able to understand exactly the type of information which needs to be made available to the public. And the technical report needs to be set out in a fashion where technical and scientific information can be relayed in a way that ordinary people and traders will be able to understand the terminology and the information which is contained within it. Accompanying the NI 43101 sets of rules and documents is the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum's best practices. Within there, they set out exactly what they deem to be the best way in terms of running a mineral resource and mineral reserve estimation. This is very assisting in terms of providing a detailed pathway for a reasonable resource and reserve estimate to be conducted, and it ensures that the correct process is undertaken to allow that information to then be relayed within the technical report. Supporting the best practices is the CIM definition standards. This is where they set out exactly what they mean in terms of terminologies which are relating to the best practices, such as what a mineral resource is, or what a mineral reserve is, what an inferred resource, indicated or measured. So there's very clear quotations within that document to ensure that each and every mining company and qualified person is reporting and using the same definitions in terms of reporting to the public, as such to allow a level playing field for all companies when it comes to trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange.